Welcome to our Marketing to Engineers webcast. New survey data, engineers' preferences for e-newsletters, blogs, and online lead forms, sponsored by CFE Media and True Marketing. To get the best results from the webcast platform, please make note of the following as you participate in today's webcast. If you are having technical problems with audio or the slide presentation, click on the question mark at the top right-hand corner of your screen to bring up a list of system checks to make before escalating to an online technician. If you are experiencing issues with your slides or audio, please refresh your browser or click the Refresh Media button directly under the presenter's headshot. You can control the volume settings of this webcast by adjusting the volume on your computer or by adjusting the volume on the webcast platform. If you need a technician, please type a message into the Ask a Question box and someone will get to you as quickly as possible. Individual technical questions will be answered in the Answered Questions on the left-hand side of your screen. You can use the Ask a Question box on the left side of your screen to type questions for the speakers during the presentation for the Q&A session at the end. You may ask questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll get to as many as time allows. Questions that are for today's presenters will be answered verbally during the Q&A session at the end of the webcast. To download the presentation slides, use the Event Resources on the left-hand side of your screen. This webcast is being recorded, including the Q&A session, and we'll send you an email message with a link to the archived version after it's ready. Today's webcast is brought to you by CFE Media and True Marketing. To learn more about these two companies, please use the Event Resources tab at the top of your screen to be directed to their websites. I'm now happy to introduce today's distinguished speakers. As Director of Content Marketing Solutions, Patrick Lynch strives to collaborate with CFE Media's marketing partners to help them build successful content marketing campaigns for targeted engineering audiences. Using Marketing to Engineers research and content stream, content solutions are built on proprietary insight and professionally developed content from CFE Media brands and content partners. By focusing the content on the manufacturing, commercial construction, and industrial automation markets, the content marketing solutions Lynch provides help those companies trying to target the consulting engineer, plant engineer, and controls engineer. Rebecca Geyer is CEO and co-founder of True Marketing based in Austin, Texas. She has over 20 years of global marketing experience, primarily in the B2B science, engineering, and technology fields. Rebecca leads the True team in building strategic, thoughtful, and sustainable marketing plans for companies and their products, services, and campaigns. Prior to co-founding True Marketing, Rebecca was the Director of Corporate Communications and Investor Relations at Austin-based National Instruments, where she worked for 14 years. With nearly 2 decades of working in scientific and in engineering industries, Rebecca is known for her technical understanding of complex topics and passionate appreciation for the impact of science, engineers, and technologists on society. Rebecca graduated magna cum laude from Boston College and studied at Université de Grenoble in France. She has written and co-authored many blogs, posts, articles, and ebooks, including True's popular Smart Marketing for Engineers series, Building the Foundation, Product Launches, and Create Marketing Engineers Love. Before we continue, please take a moment to remind yourself about dealing with technical issues during this presentation. And now we'll hear from Patrick Lynch.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Patrick Lynch, and as Kristen informed everybody, I'm the Director of Content Marketing Solutions and Marketing to Engineers at CFE Media. Today we're going to talk about the latest installment in our Marketing to Engineers research study series. This latest study focused on engineers' preferences for e-newsletters, blogs, and contact registration forms. This survey was collected in October of 2014 over 1 week's period of time. We had over 1,000 engineers participate in this research study, and they were given the incentive for a $50 Visa gift card if they participated in the survey. They were offered a chance to win in a drawing. From that study, we're going to go through a few of the different findings that we found the most informative for today's webcast. The slide you see up here, the next two slides are going to talk just a little bit more about the demographic breakdown of who took this survey. As you'll see from these two charts, that primarily right around 85% of the people who took this survey were either in an engineering or engineering management profession. You see on the right-hand side that the collection of data came from both large and small engineering firms. These were a pretty adequate representation for us at CFE Media across control engineering, consulting, specifying engineer, and plant engineering. We had about equal distribution across those three brands, and the average size of the company of the engineer who took this survey was about 319 employees. Lastly, the current age for the people who took the survey was about 52 years old, and with about 3% electing not to report their age. And this is pretty consistent with our data across the board. Typically, for our audiences, it's about 85 to 90% male, and the average age is right around that 50 to 52 years of age. One of the first questions that we asked the engineers when they participated in this survey was what value they placed on certain content sources. So we started at a very high level, and we wanted to know from an engineer's perspective, when they were looking to seek out information about the latest engineering technologies or industry trends or product information, where did they turn to first? As you can see on this chart, first and foremost, the engineers were going to the search engines. As pretty consistent with the spring 2014 research, we saw that search engines were the number one source of information for the engineers. In particular, about 90% used Google, and then about 7 to 8% used Bing and other search engines. But as you move down from top to bottom on this research, you'll see that the engineers found that the supplier-vendor websites were an important source of information, along with sources such as trade publication websites, and then right on down the list. So what this tells us, and kind of the implications for this, is that the engineers do find supplier websites valuable. They find trade publications such as ourselves, both the magazine in print edition and online, as valuable sources of information. But as you'll see down at the bottom of the list, things like social media and YouTube, which often get a good amount of emphasis at a lot of companies, right now the engineers don't see that as a primary source of valuable information. Referencing our spring 2014 study once again, we found that if an engineer does seek out a social media as a content source, they typically go to LinkedIn first and foremost as that good source of information. Then, after the engineers answered where were their valuable content sources, we asked them, what are your preferred content types when you're on those sources? So taking kind of search engines out of the equation, we asked them things like product information, white papers, case studies. We asked them what types of information they were deemed as the most valuable when they were on those content sources. As you see from this slide right here, first and foremost, the engineers need product information. This is pretty consistent with what we've seen over the years from the feedback from those engineers, but as you can see, they need that product information to help them do their jobs better. They're actively seeking that out, whether it be on the search engines or on suppliers' websites or when they come to any of the CFE Media websites. But as you continue on down this chart, you'll see that white papers, trade publication articles in print, trade publication articles online, case studies, application stories. There's a bit of a theme with, the content types that they're looking for, and we like to think of it as content that helps them do their job better. And for these engineers, they actively seek out that content type when they're on those sources because they have a limited amount of time. They need to get to that information quickly, but they will go through the necessary steps to find that information so long as it's something that, as you can see here, they would see as best practices or something that helps them solve an engineering problem at their work. As we advance the slide here, you'll see that we then got into more detail with the engineers about their particular preferences when it came to things like newsletters. So as you can see from up on the screen right here, we asked them, on average, how many newsletters do you subscribe to? We all get a lot of emails, as do the engineers, and as you can see from the results, the engineers say they subscribe to, on average, 9 different e-newsletters. You can see the breakdown here up on the screen, but primarily they're going to get about 2 newsletters from suppliers and vendors, usually about 3 from magazine or trade publications, 2 or 3 from industry associations, and then 2 from independent sources. So what this tells us is they're extremely busy, they get a lot of emails, and so the question is, or the implication is, how do you make a newsletter communication stand out to those engineers? We ask ourselves this question as a media company every day of, if an engineer is going to subscribe to our editorial newsletters, how do we get them to open those newsletters? How do we get them to click into it? And that similar problem is something that we hear from our marketing partners as we're sending out e-newsletters. We're trying to get more engineers to open them. How do we do that? So the next slide up on the screen is going to talk about what an engineer told us were the most successful elements of an e-newsletter that they receive. At the top of the list, you'll see the engineers said that new technical content was the primary successful element for them. They wanted to make sure that if they were going to open those e-newsletters, the newsletters had to have new technical content available in them. Then as you continue on down the list, you'll see that application stories, quick facts, and then new products were the next successful elements that they identified. This kind of is pretty consistent with the valuable content type slide that we just saw, where the engineers will be happy to click into the articles, but they want to see an article that helps them solve a problem, something that they would have seen as, in their typical engineering profession. They want to know, did another engineer face this same type of problem, and how can I learn from their situation and help kind of avoid that problem or solve that problem in their own line of work. So for us, we take a look at this and say these are the most successful elements. So when we craft our email messages as a media company, we try to keep this in mind that we're including content that has those types of elements included, application stories, case studies, etc. The last question on newsletters is kind of a qualitative breakdown of what the engineers said in terms of improving the e-newsletters. So this was active feedback from those engineers about if they could make the newsletters more valuable, what would they do? And you see the first thing they would change is instead of sending a generalized e-newsletter out, they wanted the e-newsletters to focus on a specific topic and go into greater detail on that topic. Then as you go down from the top of the chart to the bottom, you see obviously they want them to be less promotional. They'd like these newsletters to be more objective. They would like more content included in those newsletters, and they would like things like direct URLs and more application articles included in them. And this is pretty consistent with what we hear from our engineers when we're talking to them about how do they use e-newsletters. Typically, they'll store them in an inbox, they'll review them from the subject line and the source, and then they'll go into whatever typical content provider they found most informative. So they're kind of creatures of habit that way, and we found that a lot of click-throughs happen kind of later on in the workday because they might not open that e-newsletter right away. But this type of feedback right here just tells you that if you're going to send out newsletters, try to segment your audience into specific topics or subgroups so that you're not just casting a wide net with your content. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and transition over to Rebecca. She's going to talk a little bit more about the findings from additional sections on the research study. And Rebecca, it's all you.
Yeah, I'm here. All right, cool. Thanks, Pat. And thanks, everyone, for being here. It's great to have the opportunity to share insights from the second survey project with Pat and his team with CFE Media. As a marketer, this is the information that I've always wanted to have, and it's such a fantastic opportunity to be able to partner with CFE and really dive into these very specific areas. And, I think a recurring theme from certainly what we saw in the spring and what we see already, what Pat's shown, and and what I'll go through next, is that this audience of engineers, they are seeking technical content from us that they find valuable and credible. Or said another way, content that is unbiased and trustworthy, whether it's through our websites, our blogs, e-newsletters, other things that we've covered in the past survey and here. No matter the channel, we as marketers have this huge challenge, but also a great opportunity to be the stewards to ensure that our teams are publishing high-quality content that our customers appreciate and will reward us with by visiting our websites and engaging with us. I was going to share that I heard this great phrase that stuck with me from a keynote speaker at this past year's Inbound conference that HubSpot puts on in Boston. And the person said that we need to make the shift from always be closing to always be helping. And I think while this message was targeted more at the sales team and the audience, I think we as marketers, we can take it as definitely a relevant marching order to be generous, to focus on high-quality content like what Pat said about content that helps our customers do their job. And I think by doing that, Seth Godin coined this term, the generosity economy, about companies that, his prediction is that companies that will thrive by building trust, generating demand, ultimately closing a lot of business through great content, versus becoming obscure, which is the scary alternative. So anyway, I wanted to share that theme because I really feel like that's a recurring theme that we continue to see, and how you strike that balance between selling your wares and always be helping is that balance that we as marketers, I think, have to find. So, okay, so let's move into the next set of data, and let's talk about blogs. Hang on one second. Okay, great. So of those who responded earlier in Pat's section that they view blogs as either very or moderately valuable content type, we asked two follow-on questions, and the first one is here. So in this one, we see which source of blog these engineers found most credible. And here, industry and trade publication blogs like those from CFE are considered most valuable. Supplier blogs rank lowest. When you look on the left-hand side of these horizontal charts, there's the blue section and then the red. The blue represents very credible. This was probably one of the biggest takeaways I saw when I visually looked at this slide of the difference in the data, is that when you look at the blue, supplier blogs rank lowest in the very credible category. And I think, as trade publications are inherently perceived as more trustworthy and objective and unbiased, it's not surprising. But as I just talked about, I believe we as marketers, we have a real opportunity to set a high bar for ourselves to make sure that we're publishing and putting out credible technical content on our blogs, just like we would with white papers or in our ads that we run and other channels. So overall, though, I think the blog sources are all deemed as quite credible sources by it was about 150 respondents to this particular question. What's interesting, though, is the next finding, which really gets into the heart of what it takes to build an effective blog, and I want to dive into that now. Oh, I went too far. Okay. So respondents told us here what they believe makes the blog credible. And what I took away from this very simply was that all the same characteristics that apply to other types of content, such as white papers, video, pick your type of content, apply here. Engineers want objective technical content on blogs that they visit, and that's content such as what we see here in the bars that go along this chart. Case studies, research-founded information, application stories are the top ones here. These are all content types that provide information, again, just like Pat said, that help them do their job. I wanted to mention as a sidebar what we find in our experience doing marketing. what we find the best use of a blog is when it's a component of a larger integrated approach. And I wanted to give an example here. So say you're running an ad campaign in control engineering. Before you run the campaign, and hopefully all of you are doing this anyway, you have your landing page set up, you have your content plan in place for once someone looks at that ad and they go to engage further, you have a content plan to drive them down the funnel. And that content plan should include both free and what we call gated or content that's behind a lead form. So if you think about the free content, imagine you have an ad campaign running. What if you had a three-part series on your blog that goes into more detail about the key pillars of the campaign that you're running? And to take it a step further, these posts could, say they were about 400 or 500 words, maybe 400, and they could largely be pulled from a larger, say 2,500, 3,000, even 3,500 word white paper that's gated. In this way, your blog serves to whet the appetite of the visitor who saw the ad with a taste of what they'll get in more in-depth if they access the white paper. So in this example, the blog rounds out your campaign by serving as the first touch with high-quality technical content that you leverage from a bigger piece. It doesn't require as much commitment from the user because it's free, all while improving your SEO by having your content on the blog in a second place, providing your prospects and customers with valuable information, showing off your engineers' expertise in a free way without just going straight to the white paper, and then strengthening your company and the reputation as a go-to resource for valuable information. So I wanted to give that example because we talk about sometimes, and there often is a negative or sometimes even a visceral response from our customers about, oh, you know, we don't believe in blogs, or we don't know how to use them. And I think if you just think about it in this way, I hope that example will help those of you who are helping to try and figure out how blogs might fit into your program to help explain. And for those of you who are maybe C-level or running your smaller business, maybe it helps you visualize how blogs work in a marketing campaign. Okay, so then let's move to the next topic, which was contact information. So we are really excited to get hard data on this topic. From our target audience of engineers, there is, I think, a perception out there that engineers won't fill out lead forms. And the truth is, in my experience, many years at National Instruments where we converted an enormous amount of leads online, and certainly what I've seen in my years working with our clients at True, that if information is deemed valuable, engineers will absolutely fill out a form to get it. And I think Pat, said this earlier, that CFE, they see this in their experience as well. So we're going to look in a minute about information about the number and types of fields to use. But first, I want to get into this data about where to use forms and where to keep content free. So if you look at the chart here, I want to break it into a couple of groups. So if you look at the top 4 content types, 3 of the top 4, webcasts, white papers, trade publication articles, for us, this confirmed what we have already observed in our experience, that engineers are used to completing lead forms for this type of content. So if you're a marketer weighing where to place your lead forms, I would definitely start or continue putting lead forms in front of this type of content. As a side note, I wanted to also mention on this slide, we don't get into this topic in this webcast, but lead form pages are what people refer to as landing pages. It's a huge part of the success of a lead form is what is on that page, how you're selling that content. And so there are best practices around landing page design and content that we don't get into here. But if anyone wants more information about that, just email me offline and I can point you to information about best practices around landing page design. Okay, so getting back to the content types on this slide. So I was in group 1. The one that I was surprised to see was product information. I was surprised to see that so high. When I think about content such as data sheets, at True, we usually don't recommend gating this type of content. You don't want to keep engineers from quickly getting to information like product specifications. So the reality is we were vague here on what we meant by product information, and someone who registered for the webcast actually asked very specifically, did you further specify product information or did you just use those 2 words? And the reality is we just used those 2 words. So it may need further research. However, what I do find interesting is that the second most likely type of content respondents tell us they'll fill out a lead form for is product information. So for the product companies out there, I think it's good to take note of this. You have a real opportunity to experiment with putting lead forms around product information or product-related content that you believe is highly valuable. And of course, that's a very subjective thing. I think a good rule of thumb to think about is the level of effort the piece took to create. Did it require involvement from your lead engineers? Is it more informative or valuable than content that you're making available for free? And keep in mind that you can always try the lead form and remove it later if you're getting high bounce rates on the landing page. And then finally, for the bottom group, from case studies to blogs, we saw less than half of respondents saying they would be likely to complete lead forms for this type of content. And we tend to agree with this. Stay clear of putting lead forms in front of these type of content types. The only exception I would make to that is the online communities and industry trend reports. I think for both of these, it's reasonable to have lead forms in front of them, but I think, again, you can try it out. If you're getting a high bounce rate, you may need to revisit your landing page and lead form, or simply make the content free. Pat, do you have anything you wanted to add here about content forms from what you guys see on the CFE media side?
Yeah, I think you did a great job kind of reviewing it there. The one thing I would add is just, we get asked pretty frequently as a media company about, online video training and how-to videos and product demonstration videos. And, it's good to have this type of research now so we can kind of reference it, because we were always asked, well, should we put a registration wall in front of a product demo video or a how-to video? And I think, this is kind of a byproduct of kind of the YouTube culture, is that most videos that people can access, they expect them to be free. They want to watch them in real time. They'll put up with an ad ahead of a YouTube clip, but they're not always willing to kind of register for a video that they expect to be kind of open or ungated. So it was good to kind of see that confirmed. We've had a lot of conversations with our marketing partners over the years about whether or not to gate those videos, and we'll kind of watch this trend and see if it goes up or down in the next research study that we're going to launch in Q1 of this year. But it's just kind of an interesting stat to pull away from this slide.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right, so then let's dive into the second part of the blog section here that looks at which fields to prioritize on our lead forms. Okay. So we are so thrilled to have this data. We all want to know, how many fields should we prioritize? Which fields should we have? And in fact, one registrant, I hope he's here today, Dave, in the process control space, he asked a question when he registered, basically exactly along these lines: what fields are must-have for online lead forms? So Dave, I hope you're here. I'm happy to report we now have information that we can use to specifically address this really important question. So I'd like to, as I look through this data, I kind of grouped it into 3 groups and of engineers and which ones they're likely to complete. So group 1, you see the first 5 field types have a notably higher likelihood of being completed by the respondents than the rest, all more than 70% likely to be completed. The next 4 in group 2 have just less than about a 50% chance of being completed. And then the final group 3, the rest of the field of options we asked about, including phone, website, purchase time frame have nearly less than 25% chance of being completed. So this really gives us clarity about where to start in our prioritization. The reality is, as marketers, of course, we want all this information. And so I wanted to spend just a minute and talk about how we as marketers can create a positive experience for our visitors and prospects on our website, but also gather lead intelligence over the lead life cycle, the journey of the lead. And to do this, I wanted to talk about marketing automation software. Software like HubSpot or another leading platform. There was a question about marketing automation in the registration when you guys registered, so I thought it would be good to talk a little bit here as an example. So marketing automation to help with gathering lead information over time. So most, if not all, marketing automation software has built-in features to allow you to automatically add fields for existing leads to complete when they come back to visit your site. So for instance, in HubSpot, you may require your initial set of 3 to 5 fields, such as the one in Group 1 here, name, email, so forth, the first time a visitor completes a lead form. Then HubSpot has a feature called Smart Forms. So with Smart Forms, when the lead comes back to a new landing page to access new information, the fields they've already completed appear pre-populated. And then you can use another feature called Smart Fields to include a new field they haven't yet completed that you'd like to know from the list above, or maybe one that your company or your marketing team wants to prioritize or wants to know or gather. So then the user only has to complete one new field to access the next piece of gated information they're wanting. So by using these smart features, you can gather more and more information from your visitors one field at a time after that first form completion. And what's amazing about this is, I come from having worked at a very large enterprise billion-dollar company, and not just speaking broadly, large enterprise marketing web IT teams have spent thousands and thousands of dollars pre the marketing automation software period that we're in now, implementing these very highly sophisticated back-end features. But today, with most marketing automation software, they're built in. So this is awesome for marketers at companies large and small, powerful features that they create great user experiences for customers because customers come back and see that you know them. It instills trust. And again, it's a significant value for us to gather more and more intelligence in an efficient and affordable way. So we love that. It's how we solve this issue of only being able to ask a few fields at a time, but knowing that we want to get as much information as we can, and so we use it as much as we can. So I wanted to offer that up as maybe a tip for 2015 to consider maybe how to gather this information over time. Okay, so moving to a couple of the last slides around content structure, we wanted to learn more specifically what type of content formats engineers prefer across content types. So we have a couple here, and then there's a couple more in the full survey report, but here we pulled out e-newsletters, and also the next one I'll talk about is web pages. Someone in the Q&A asked about also the content structure around blogs. I didn't include that in my slides here, but know that in the full survey report, that information, just like the next 2 slides I'm going to go through, is there. So here on e-newsletters, what we see loud and clear is that readers want short paragraphs and bulleted lists. As Patrick mentioned earlier when he was reviewing the e-newsletter data, having short headlines followed by 1 to 2 sentences that explain the topic further with direct URLs to the web pages or the articles, that is the preferred and most effective structure for e-newsletters. As a side note, someone else, Catherine, who's in the professional engineering services industry, asked about what the best length is for an email subject line, and so I wanted to touch on that briefly. We just did a blog post about this, and when you guys get the post-webcast email, we'll include a URL to a blog post that we just did at True on this. But the sweet spot seems to be around 28 to 39 characters. But as we go into more detail in the blog post, there's more elements to this that make a subject line impactful than just length versus whether it's timely or non-timely in the tone of the subject line. So check that out when it comes in the email. Okay, and then my last slide, I wanted to touch on the preferred content structure around web pages. So contrasting to e-newsletters, we have more liberty with content on web pages. We see here a mixed response with heavy emphasis on images and graphics, short paragraphs, but also bulleted lists. However, we found, and always our recommendation as we're designing websites and developing content is you can go deeper in as you go deeper into the site, you have more liberty to go deeper in your content. As visitors are engaging deeper in, they're showing an interest in that topic and a willingness to read more. So you have more liberty there. However, I would say that longer paragraphs of content, I believe, and it's my recommendation, should be reserved for long copy pieces such as white papers. You do want to be generous, like I talked about before, but you also want to strive for a fair exchange of information with your web visitors, so don't lose an opportunity to convert a visitor to a lead when it's reasonable. But with that said, this is the data on web pages. And then I mentioned we have a couple of other slides similar to this on blogs, and I think the other one is on data sheets, so check that out in the full survey report. So that's the end of my prepared slides. I think I'll turn it over to you at this point, Kristen.
Thank you, Pat and Rebecca. That was a terrific presentation. Are you both ready to take on some questions from the audience?
Yes, ma'am.
Please type your questions for today's presenters in the Ask a Question box on your screen. We'll get to as many questions as we can. Questions will be answered verbally during this Q&A session. Within a few days, this presentation will be available for on-demand viewing, and we will send you an email message with the link connecting directly to it after it's ready. Questions that we do not get to today will be posted online at marketingtoengineersblog.com with the archived version of this webcast. We've had a ton of questions come in from the audience, so let's dive right in. Pat, let's start with you. In marketing for engineers, is there a silver bullet, or rather a tool set?
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, I saw this question come in kind of in our Q&A box down below, and it interested me because the short answer is no. There is unfortunately no silver bullet when it comes to marketing engineers. They are definitely a unique audience in terms of their content consumption habits, where they go to for their valuable content information, how many pages they'll go through on Google search results before they get to the right information. But I think, the key thing for this type of question that we've learned through this research and our efforts, as a media and publishing company that specializes in content for engineers, we've learned that you need to run what we would call an integrated cross-channel campaign. So there is no silver bullet theory because engineers respond to information and consume information across several different channels. And channels we would define as website content, print advertising, things in social media. As Rebecca talked about, good content on blogs will, kind of move up in the priority scale for the engineers. But for us, we believe that you got to be in as many channels as possible, whether you're advertising or whether you're doing content marketing. You need to be in as many cross-channel areas as possible. And, in addition to that, I would say that the idea of repurposing content, that's something that I know the Content Marketing Institute, they've covered in their research study, but the idea of repurposing content across several tactics being things like channels, social media, etc., that idea of a good piece of content should be shared across those several channels. So it's kind of a long answer to a somewhat short question, but I think for the silver bullet theory, I think your best strategy is to have content available across several channels with the hopes that an engineer is going to see you as that thought leader in that market, and then hopefully get back to your site and obviously start to look up product information or contact a sales representative, etc. So, Rebecca, I don't know if you had anything to add on the silver bullet theory, but that was kind of what I had in mind.
Yeah, no, well, number one, I totally agree. There's no silver bullet, for sure. I wish there was. But I think you're absolutely right about the opportunity to leverage content across channels and repurpose. And that example I gave with the ad campaign and control engineering followed on as the call to action being that free. So it's free with the 3-series blog post where that content is harvested directly out of a white paper that's gated. That's a great example of repurposing that content. So spend the time developing a really high quality white paper, get your engineers involved, really make sure it's accurate, technical, really helpful, and has the voice of the customer in it in terms of making sure it helps them really doing their job, and then harvest out of that some blog posts that really help you with SEO, help provide that free first touch to the person who saw your ad in control engineering to whet their appetite for that content. So that's a great example of how to do that.
Great. Thanks, you guys. Rebecca, this next question is for you. What kind of marketing automation are other companies using who market to engineers? Okay, great. Yeah, this question came in from Brooke at Red Viking. So thanks, Brooke, for the question. I'm really glad someone asked about this. This is one of the most important investments I think marketers can make to improve their efficiency and in the intelligence of marketing programs, kind of like I talked about with the smart features of HubSpot in that lead contact slide I was going through. So the most common ones that we come across, we tend to work with smaller to medium-sized companies for the most part. We do work with larger companies, but so we see HubSpot for those small to medium-sized companies, and then for the larger ones, we see Eloqua and Marketo. And for the larger, usually it's higher volumes of activities. They're running many campaigns simultaneously, and often there's a focus on very sophisticated email marketing where you're doing a lot, again, high volume, a lot of ABC, multiple testing, and so that's where we usually run into Eloqua and Marketo more, in particular Eloqua. What we found is that the features do vary somewhat, but the fundamentals are really mostly the same when it comes, and it really comes down to ease of use, which of those features that are really the core expertise of a particular marketing automation company are most important to you, and then, of course, pricing. We love the HubSpot interface. We use it all the time. It's intuitive. It's really clean, easy to customize. Our engineering customers who use it have found it to be a sound investment, really easy to use. Like anything new, it requires that you're constantly making investment in it to get the most out of it. So if you're just using 20% of the features, you're only going to be 20% probably satisfied with your investment. So training, always investing more. My recommendation would be if you're considering evaluating marketing automation in 2015, the first thing to do would be prioritize what is most important for you. Is it saving time in your web marketing, being able to quickly execute email campaigns, get landing pages up, have your analytics served up to you? If it's just saving time, maybe that's the biggest priority. Is it keyword analysis or social media management? Is it more of this really sophisticated level of email marketing? Get with your team and prioritize what the most important priorities are for you in making this investment. Almost think about it like if you were going to hire another person on your marketing team, you're going to think about, do I need a writer? Do I really need someone who's an expert in email marketing? Do I need someone who's going to own my website? Just in the same way, think about your marketing automation. What is the biggest priority that you get out of that investment? Once you have that list, then set up demos with the companies that you're most interested in, that you hear
your colleagues in the market who you trust saying that they've had good experiences with them, and ask them the tough questions on features, on pricing. I think there is an opportunity to negotiate on pricing, especially if you pay up front. So I would encourage any company on this call, certainly that's over $5 million in revenue, to seriously consider adopting marketing automation. If you're over $15 million, you should absolutely be using it. And in some instances, it can save enough time and money, I think, to pay for itself. For the larger companies on the call, you're probably already using even like an Oracle or certainly an Eloqua. And so just make sure you're getting the most out of it. So thanks, Brooke, for the question.
Rebecca, I just had one other thought on the marketing automation, just because it just like you emphasized there. I would suggest and recommend that people, if they're not currently looking at marketing automation providers, that they definitely start that process. And it really is for two reasons when you're talking about marketing and eventually selling to engineers. And the first thing is that the majority of the companies that we deal with at CFE Media, they're large companies that might have a variety of products, but even if you have a very specific product line that you're trying to reach to those engineers, your buy cycle or your sell cycle for those products might be several months. It might be 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And so the ability to kind of automate some of those tasks when it comes to creating touch points with engineers is really where I think for marketing automation, especially if you're trying to reach engineers, is where kind of the sweet spot is. Because if your buy cycle is several months in length and you need help kind of setting reminders for emails or creating those touch points, the marketing automation providers do it, and they do it very well for, what in, kind of nowadays, 2014, 2015, pretty low cost. As you said, a lot of them have switched to that software as a service cloud-based model, and I think if you have a relatively long sales or buy cycle for your products, marketing to them with marketing automation is definitely a primary benefit. And then I think for the other portion of it, for marketing automation is the creation of those touch points. You need to figure out how are we going to kind of map out who our audience is. We have a lot of customers or marketing partners on the line right now who, sell products or market products to consulting engineers, plant engineers, control engineers, and you got to figure out how do I segment my audience? How do I build personas so I'm making sure I'm sending the right message at the right stage in the buy cycle to a consulting engineer or a plant engineer, et cetera. So I think those two things really lend support to people that are looking at investing in marketing automation systems. And HubSpot, Marketo, any of them are definitely the key providers out there. But the costs have really come down for a lot of those MAS providers in the marketplace. So just one thing I wanted to add to your portion there, Rebecca.
Yeah, super. Thanks for chiming in.
Great. Thanks, guys. We've had a ton of questions come in from the audience, so we're going to continue to take a couple more. I'm going to direct this next one to you, Pat. How does one correlate effective content marketing to its impact on branding?
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, I saw this question pop in as well, and the first thought that came to mind is that, in kind of the modern era right now, your website is effectively open 24/7. So I always try to ask our marketing partners, how do you want your website, how do you want your brand to be perceived? And from a content marketing perspective, I think one of those, kind of tangible benefits, it's hard to put a direct ROI on it, but when you talk about content marketing, if you have good, thought-provoking, informative content, everything that Rebecca and I just went through on the previous slides about content that helps those engineers do their job better, that experience that engineer has with your site is going to create a higher brand awareness, brand preference, just because they feel like you're rewarding them for coming to your site or opening your newsletter. Or if they follow you on social media, you want to provide them with that good content on that channel because they've taken the effort to follow you on social media. So reward them with good content. So that idea of rewarding engineers with a good content marketing strategy I think is one of the best direct benefits you can have to your brand perception. And just, one additional note to that, in preparation for this webcast, I was reading a research report that I'll post on the, follow-up article that we post on our Marketing to Engineers blog. But there was a research report called the Content Promotion Manifesto, and they just talked about the state of content marketing and what we're all competing with as content developers. And they said that every minute of every day, there are 571 websites that are launched. So every minute of every day, 571 websites are launched, 350,000 tweets are tweeted, and 48 hours of YouTube videos are uploaded. That's every minute of every day. And then if you think of over the course of a day, Rebecca spent a lot of time talking about blog posts and how to make a credible blog post and how to make yours stand out. The stat was there's 2.73 million blog posts that are published every day on the Internet. Now, they don't all apply to reaching marketing to engineers and content that's available for engineers, but that's just kind of a state of the industry right now when you talk about content marketing and trying to get your message heard. So we like to think that webcasts like this and the research and the insight that subject matter experts like True Marketing and Rebecca's group over there can provide can really help everybody improve that brand perception through things like a content marketing strategy, a marketing automation software, a good social media posting technique. So it's just something that I thought was interesting in regards to the brand perception and brand awareness question. Rebecca, I don't know if you had anything on that particular question, or if we wanted to move on to the next one, but it was just something that I know stuck out to me when we were looking at the questions here.
No, your answer was great. I have nothing to add.
All right, Rebecca, now on to you. What types of content do engineers seek at different stages in the buying cycle, pre- and post-sales?
Yeah, okay, great. And this question came in from Camille at Micromotion. So, Camille, thanks again for your question. I thought about this, and I wanted to share. So first, I think it's important when you think about along the buying cycle, it's first you have to know your persona. So defining the persona, going through that persona exercise and mapping out what the buying cycle looks like first. Who are the influencers? What are their pain points, et cetera. Once you have the persona information, then what I recommend you do is something that we do with our customers a lot is what we call a content along the funnel plan. So mapping out the engagement path from one piece of content at the top of the funnel all the way through to the bottom. So at the top you want to offer obviously valuable, informative content, but content that's ungated or free, such as blog posts, web pages, maybe short videos, that product information like data sheets. And on each of these pages then, when you have a blog post or different web pages around your product or service, short videos, on those pages where that content lies, then you need to have what we recommend is at least one free and one gated next call to action. So the free content can be more of the type of content I just mentioned, and then the gated could be a short webcast, maybe under 10 minutes, could be a white paper, it could be an application questionnaire, maybe research data, maybe I know back at NI, and they maybe still do this, like a State of the Union, especially right around the first of the year. That's a really good time to do something like that. It presents you as a thought leader in the particular markets that you serve. So we learned from the survey that engineers, they are quite willing to complete forms. The key is, as marketers, how we sell the content and ensuring that it's this fair exchange of information, that the perception by filling out a form that they're going to get something even more valuable. You want to at least meet that expectation or certainly exceed it. So that's a way to think about how to develop content along the stages of the funnel or the stages of the buying cycle for pre-sales. And then for post-sales, so if you think of a funnel, the funnel for the sales and marketing funnel, it's wide at the top, and then you get down to a close. Well, imagine that your post-sales comes out of that close point and then filters out wide, so it's an inverted funnel. Now you need to think about all your customers that are sitting down here in your customer database and what your content plan looks like in order to do things like build loyalty, ensuring success with your product or service, driving referential business. What does that content look like? And again, I think it comes back to that persona and understanding the intelligence that you've gathered about that persona over a period of time. What is that content that you're going to want to do, that you're going to want to build at the inverted funnel, again, that builds loyalty, that ensures the success with your product or service and gets them to recommend your company or your products and services to their colleagues. So I think it's just that really important persona exercise, mapping out the buying cycle, and then building this content along the funnel exercise that maps that engagement all the way down, and that's driven by features, advantages, benefits of your product that are aligned to pain points that you know the persona has. That's usually how we build them out, and they just create a lot of efficiency for you, and they allow you to be very intentional about the content you create and these paths that you are able to define for yourself. So I hope that's helpful, Camille. And Pat, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
No, I think that was a great answer. I have nothing to add.
All right, we're going to take one final question. Pat, this is directed towards you. Please explain how to align the persona presumed value to the business goals and values.
Yeah, I think I know we're right up against the deadline here, so I'll try to keep it short. I guess the one thing I would add to this question is that, for a company who might be trying to market or sell products across several different types of engineers, I think, a good habit to get everybody into is defining almost a editorial or content calendar. And what I mean by that is if you can define a content calendar, what content you're going to work on throughout the year, what are kind of your keystone content items, whether they be a white paper series or a big case study or any sort of video training or anything like that. You want to take those keystone content events and then you want to figure out who is the target audience designed for that content piece. What is the theme of that content? So if we're going to develop a topical theme for all of our content, what should it be? Is it energy management or energy efficiency or Internet of Things, just to use a couple examples from our marketplace? Once you identify the keystone content items and you figure out what the themes are, you'll start to see where that content, to go off of what Rebecca said, should be used in a buy cycle and whom that content should be used for. Because if you're trying to reach electrical engineers versus plant and manufacturing engineers, I think you'll start to see in a spreadsheet form, or there's some templates that we can share with you on our website that lets you map out the content we're developing and who that content should be used for, and then what are the themes of the content. And typically the themes of the content should focus on whatever products you're launching or upgrading in the calendar year. So a lot of times the themes will correspond with the product you're launching helps save energy or helps connect somebody to the Internet of Things or something like that. So I would say that's how you align a persona value with a business or corporate value that you're trying to instill in 2015 and beyond. So I don't know. I know we're right up against the deadline here, but definitely, as Kristen said, we'll try to answer the rest of these questions and get them posted up on our Marketing Engineers blog as soon as possible. But Rebecca, thanks for your insight.
Yeah.
For putting it together, absolutely. And I'll turn it back over to Kristen here.
Thanks, guys. We had several people ask about social media and age discrepancies in terms of preferences. We can go back to our findings from the spring survey for this one. In the spring, we asked more specifically about each individual social media site, LinkedIn versus Twitter, etc. And we have data that breaks down the findings there. You can download the Marketing to Engineers Spring Survey under the Helpful Websites tab at the top of your screen. Thanks again to our great speakers, Patrick Lynch and Rebecca Geyer, for sharing their time and expertise. Please take a moment to check out a list of CFE Media and True Marketing resources. These are hyperlinked directly to their informational pages. A link to the full set of research findings is included on this page. Also, look out for information from CFE Media in the upcoming weeks on our Marketing to Engineers event on March 23rd in downtown Chicago. During the educational sessions, industry experts will discuss the emerging trends and tactics for marketing to engineers effectively. Now that we're just about done, we want to hear how we did. The exit survey will pop up on your screen as soon as this webcast ends. Please take a moment to complete it as we use this information to improve our webcasts and plan for future research studies. The next edition of the Marketing to Engineers research will be unveiled at the March 23rd Marketing to Engineers event. On behalf of CFE Media and True Marketing, thanks for attending this webcast. Copyright 2015 CFE Media. This concludes our webcast. Thank you.